to the AI Lab Unfiltered podcast, where we take a deep dive into tools, applications, and stories built around AI. Today, we have Craig Tucker, CEO from Vern AI. Craig, welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, gentlemen.
Glad you could be here.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
Nice intro, by the way. Good job.
Well, you know,
Come on, you're pandering.
my game show intro, and then it turns into, high school high-pitched voice kid. So tell me a little bit about Vern. Tell me about the background of it.
Sure.
We had a great conversation out in the hallway, and then we were like, time out. We got to get in and talk about this.
Sure, no problem. Well, I appreciate that. Well, Vern AI came about when I was at Michigan State University. It was in the doctoral program and doing some research. My grandfather had died. His name was Vern. And like any good grandson, I wanted to make sure that grandma wasn't alone and she had a companion. So I started diving into the research. Why not make her a bot? Why not do something in automation? I'm already running a technology development company. Sure, why not, right? Well, we dove in. One of the things we found is that it wasn't possible, because sentiment analysis was currently the only way that people were able to tell emotions in any type of communication. And that just gave you positive, negative, neutral, and mixed. Not a lot you can do with that, right? Mm-hmm. So we kind of dove into that to say, all right, out of this, how do we get this better? What we found was that the psychology models don't agree, that there are several different models and frameworks, and sometimes they compete. So you tend to get a pretty fractured look at, any type of phenomena when you have, the source material and the scientists are in consensus. There's a standard model that says there's 5 emotions. There's also one that says there's 7. Standard, right?
Yeah,
5 and 7. And then there's one that says there's 9 emotions. And then you have Plutchik's wheel, which is 13 emotions on a wheel and a continuum. They're diametrically opposed, which is great. It's the most common model out there. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually hold up. It can't happen in the brain, the way the brain works. So what we did was we went back and looked, okay, is there any other type of science or any type of field of study that's actually going to be able to identify what these phenomena are? Because everybody has emotions, right? Yep. And that's one thing we found is everybody has them, so that everyone thinks they're an expert. I did too, and so many myths were busted when we found out through neuroscience is that there actually is a model out there we can observe. It's pretty simple. There are literally only 3 emotions, right? As we would know it. So it's basically euphoria, dysphoria, or more likely euphoria, not euphoria, because there's a blocking signal that blocks. That's kind of a binary system. And this weird little thing called fear, right? The fear is
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We found too, as part of the research, is that it's precognitive in some way. So your body's reacting to it in certain nerve bundles and nodes before it actually gets to the brain. So that points to an evolutionary, cause for fear, and it makes sense. Beings would have fear to survive, right? You want to be a little cautious sometimes. So the amount of fear is probably one of the very first emotions out there. It's one of the ones that helps to reinforce learning. And so what we found was we now had euphoria, dysphoria, and fear. Okay. Yeah. So we started taking a look at the model and really massaging it, and we realized is that love and affection, love and joy, this euphoria that we feel, is not as romantic as we'd like to think it is. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to rain on anyone's parade, but for love and for joy, it really is just the alignment of your personal goals with your environment. Right? So if this iPhone gets me what I want and helps me to reclaim agency or helps me to express myself or feel the way I feel I should, then I'm going to have affectional feelings towards that particular item. It's a big debate right now in neuroscience. Can you love an object? Well, we found you probably can't, right? Because it helps to align with goals. So once we came up with this model, we wanted to test it. So we went out to Michigan State University's Federal Credit Union, ran a couple pilots with that. We were able to identify the anger and the sadness signal at accurate above 80%. Okay, we're on somewhere. So then we added fear, love, and joy. And we actually have humor too, but we're not ready to release that because y'all aren't ready, quite frankly. But yeah, that was the journey. So
I'd love to beta test that.
I'm ready. I am ready. I'll claim right now.
So yeah, that was part of the journey. So we got 2 patents on it, and we've been out there trying to establish this as a technology that's worthwhile and helps folks. Currently, we're used by an app called Evermore. They're out of New York City, and they are in 4 different countries across the world. We have tens of thousands of users use Vern every day. to detect how they feel. They talk into like an audio diary, basically, and it tells them, tracks their feelings, guides them on the way, brings things up. And so what we found out of that is we did a big survey last year. We helped out with our partner Evermore, and they found that out of 8,000 respondents, 97% of them had less anxiety.
Interesting. Okay.
Less, and even had more motivation, less negative self-talk.
And that's because they were getting more of the emotional response back.
Correct.
Right? Like we were talking about earlier, unfortunately, it wasn't on here yet, but we can bring it up now.
Sure.
People want to have that emotional feedback loop system almost to where, am I on the same page even emotionally with you? And that's what this is doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's right. And what we found is that emotions are the lingua franca of conversations, right? So we actually evolved to communicate with one another. One of the things that we found in research is that when we discover something novel, new, or unique, we get a little dopamine reward, which is great. But what we also found, some of the researchers I worked with, is that when we share that information, we get an even bigger reward. Now, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Why is that? Well, one of the reasons what we think it is because it's an evolutionary process that we had to communicate with one another in order to tell each other about where we as an individual stand within the social group and within our environment. Otherwise, there's really no reason to communicate, right? But what it allowed us to do is now we can tell each other how we feel and what we want, what we need, is now instead of one mind, we've become many minds.
Yeah.
So human beings have probably conquered the earth because of our ability to communicate, to tell each other how we feel, coordinate, and that way one small naked ape, right, which with very little defensive mechanism can conquer the entire earth. Because we're not just one mind with emotions, we're now many.
We're now multiple.
Right. And it makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint too, because if you want to focus on everything in your world, you're going to go crazy. Your mind can't do it. Give you an example. So let's say we're hunters and gatherers out on the Serengeti. We're walking along and it's a nice day. We've got, the grass, the trees, and everything else is blowing. So we can pay attention cognitively to every blade of grass and every butterfly and every leaf that goes by, or we can pay attention to that which is important. So I'll give you an idea. So we're on the Serengeti. We're looking through we're going along through the grasslands, and I'm seeing grass, 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 lion, grass, grass, grass. Right? Well, one of those things is not like the other. The lion then becomes the incongruity. We detect that, and I gave everybody a dopamine boost, by the way, and I'm getting a little larger one from sharing it, so thank you very much. But that's really the basis of our emotional communication, is we are communicating incongruities that we observe to others for other people to then observe. It all boils back into this whole sender-receiver model with emotion. So I package up what I want you to understand about me, and then I say it through a medium. This happens to be vocally and through the air. It doesn't really matter what medium it is. You pick it up, and then you unpack it based off of your understanding and your own personal experiences. So what we've done with Vern is we've found that common language model, the common ground in between, where anybody on any background would understand that as the emotion. And then from there, we can get that more refined and more tailored to the person, depending on their demographics, depending on their life experience. And this is something we call the personal frame.
So, okay. So obviously the machine's not going to have the dopamine boost, but it's going to, when it gives it to the listener or the user, they get it.
Yes, absolutely.
So they get that reward out of it when they use it. So how does this now give me like a deeper, more specific real world application?
Yeah,
I guess
sure. You mentioned Evermore earlier, and I want to go back to that too. So I think we might be saying the same. I hope we're saying the same thing here. The actual use case, like what are people using Evermore for, and where did the data come from? Where you're saying that they had better outcomes or had less anxiety, or I forget exactly how you framed it, but
sure. Well, so Evermore is an audio diary that people download. They can get on iOS or Android, and and it's won numerous awards. Won the Webby Award, won the Anthem Award. So it's got Trevor Noah and Lady Gaga behind it. So it's got some cred. And what people do is they basically talk to an AI guided journey, ask them about their day, ask them to express their feelings, ask them to tell what their feelings are. So Vern tracks what they say. So it has a baseline of knowing what emotions you're expressing.
Vern is the back end of this.
Correct.
Okay.
It's the emotion recognition system. We replaced Amazon's Comprehend, Google's Go Emotion, several other products that were out in the market. And we continue to do it because we outperform them. But yeah, that's basically it. So we replaced them so they can use Vern to detect the emotions. That then informs a behavioral framework, right? They have a psychological behavioral framework, which then they can apply to the data they're getting in from people. So tens of thousands of people are using this, every day. They're speaking to it, talking about their journeys, telling the AI how they're feeling. The AI is saying, hey, yesterday you were sad. You want to talk about that? So it gives opportunities that you might not normally have to address certain types of feelings and things that you're expressing, in an automatic way. So it enables us to do things like we're going into in Hull, England, to do a pilot with the psychiatry office there to do triage and basically screening. So folks come in, they talk to the bot, tell it what's going on, ask them some questions, can basically perform a survey or questionnaire, and you're actually going to get it filled out, which is great. We found that people will actually talk to a bot. They won't fill out a survey, but they will here with Vern. So it's perfect. We can turn all of this qualitative data into quantitative data, and now we have something. So now we can see a before and after treatment, for example. If I'm in pharmaceuticals, give somebody a drug, do they get happier? Well, Vern, you're going to know, right? Because people are going to express that, and they're going to be able to pick that up through the language and through the communications that they're using.
So Vern
We're
is
like ready to pounce on you with all these questions.
No problem.
So Vern is the framework that sits on top of that back end application.
Yeah,
right?
we're right
That
in that front
enhances
line.
that.
Yep,
Okay.
right in that front line. So when somebody talks to the application, they break that down, send that through a Vern engine that basically breaks that down in sentence by sentence and gives them each one emotion that's present, and then what intensity 0 to 100. So if I'm saying something and that flags it as high anger, like anger 97%, it then can tell the framework this person is extremely angry. Now, some of the new product we're just releasing, we're actually going to come out with our new model, and people can sign up for our wait list, is we know inside each one of these emotions, there are subdimensions, right? Now, what we mean by that is we call these emotives, and what they are emotions that are not quite the real emotion, but would tuck underneath it. Give you an example, like being irritated or annoyed, we found is a low level of anger. So all these sub-emotions, which a lot of people say are separate, actually are the same emotion, just in different intensities or with different types of emotional signals, like anger and a fear, a certain percentage. That means this, right? So
Like sarcasm?
Yeah, well, that's actually one of them we have. Anger with humor is the sarcasm signal, and we're pretty accurate with that.
Oh,
so
it's like me.
yeah, my wife would love it. So, but yeah, that's it. So we can tell you now that not only are you angry, but not only are you really angry, right, with 90% signal, but now we can say you have approach signal, right, approach avoidance. So I'm approaching, and I'm also telling you my anger signal also contains threats, insults, dehumanizing language. There's a whole host of them, about 20 of them for each emotion that we track. Now we're passing that on to the end user to give them even more detail and more subtlety and nuance to the signals in order to take action on it.
So, I've got so many questions.
I know
You're taking my mind in a million different directions for applications and stuff like this, but I want to go back to, don't let me forget to ask, you said there's a sign up for a wait list for Vern, so I want to get back to that in a second. I think most people that are listening to this are, going to be somewhat familiar with a large language model and how you communicate back and forth with it.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to kind of clarify, are you saying that if I'm using Evermore as an example, I'm still communicating like I would with an LLM, but what Vern is doing is it's also adding extra data to that so that when I get a response from the model, it's responding because of the extra data that Vern is putting on top of that emotional data that it's putting on top of it. Is that accurate? Am I in the ballpark? Okay.
Yeah, you're definitely in the ballpark. See, our API would be on non-LLM, so it's just basically can run any omni-channel deployment where you got a call center or if you got chat bots or Heck, I even want to put it in my email to analyze all the email
That
signals.
was one of my things. I wanted to bring that up too. Yeah.
That's where I was thinking too.
And it's funny, we found FOMO. We've actually been able to identify when people want to buy from us because, well, we see it in their emails and emotions can tease that out. So we actually offer that as a product too, that you can as well find FOMO, churn, CLTV, customer lifetime value. We can help establish with emotions, and you keep your people happy. So you can detect if your customer service representative is a little off today, right? And because of some of their responses, then you can help correct that. Well, going back to like large language models, it's a great example. So a large language model, as you guys, and I'm sure all your listeners know, is basically autofill on steroids, right?
Yeah, right.
It's a predictive model. It's kind of a probability engine, which is wonderful. And I've used these things, since they came out. Actually, we started using them in research a little bit before they went commercial. And noticing that they were incredible at filling in gaps, right? And especially at, finding what the next step is going to be. Fantastic. And frankly, when they came out, we went, oh crap, we're done. Right. This is it. We're done. It's gonna do everything we do, but better. And then we actually asked it and we realized it's actually terrible at emotions. And it goes back to the same problem we had at the beginning. Which model do you use? Right? Is it going to be the 5, 7, 9, 13? Or what an LLM generally does is it mixes them up and you end up getting soup. So that's why, competitors like Hume AI, ChatGPT, anybody else that's in the game is running a large language model for their motion detection. It's going to fail every time. Because you'll never get the same answer twice. That's one thing same stimulus, scientists want to try it again. Why am I getting a different answer? Okay, well, we figure that out. It's because the LLM doesn't really know what to do with it. So when we decided, okay, all right, well, what if we put Vern on it? Well, then things like hold my beer. Then it knows exactly what the emotional context is for the situation. It can handle it beautifully. So we put it into a bot with Core AI called iHeartBot, which helps people recover from heart attacks and surgery. We use University of Michigan and Mayo Clinic's program. Runs through like the first 7 days through that. You talk to the chatbot and check in like you would with the nurse. And it's emotionally intelligent. And putting Vern there so we can actually tell the LLM what the emotion is, how strong it is, what they're mad about or fearful or sad about, and then actually direct them right down a certain pathway. We coined it a direct check and direct detect and quality check. So we detect the emotions, direct them down the right pathway depending on whatever gateway that they fall over, and then the LLM can pick it up from there. And they work flawlessly. They work amazing. So we're able to actually use them within mental health once Vern determines what the emotions are. So we're actually releasing a product we're calling Lemmy. It's cute, right? LLM's Lemmy. And my engineer came up with that one. I can't take credit. So it's basically a wrapper that we put on ChatGPT. So if you have a ChatGPT account, you can put Vern on it. It will be about $5-10 a month. And everything you do run through that will be emotionally intelligent. So it detects the emotions that comes in. It helps to reprompt the AI, the large language model, as to what emotional context you have. And then beautifully, and one of the things we've really found you can use with Vern is for quality checking. You don't want to pass bad info back, right? Hallucinations. Well, it gets even worse when you're talking emotions because there's something we call an emotional contagion, right? So if I'm angry, it's going to rub off on you guys. Or if I'm fearful, you're also going to have doubt yourself. And we see this in the tens of thousands of customer conversations we've done from real customer service calls like Merrill Lynch and Best Buy and Liberty Mutual, and they all are the same thing, right? We have a CSR.
It's pronounced Biberty.
Bibbity. Sorry. Excuse me. I'm waiting for the male model to come out of the woodwork. Hit me.
Sorry.
That's right.
Biberty.
It's Bibbity. So I lost my train of thought. Thanks, Pete.
This worst podcast host ever. Your guest is on a roll.
That's why we call it unfiltered.
Throw a self-serving joke in there just to make yourself giggle.
That's awesome.
No, all right.
But to take Vern and add it to that reasoning generative AI model, like you said, that's the human element now. And if it can, I don't know where I'm going with this.
I'd totally
but
ruin
I'm just seeing it kind of come together where having that generative AI back end with Vern on top of that. I mean, you've got a hell of a reasoning model, like a hell of a mindset now coming out of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it makes the AI more like we are, right? And people react
Very
to it more
human.
like we do because it is very human. And that's what we're actually pitching is we're now going to be selling AI humans. It's not agents. We were there, and everybody else is kind of getting there, which is cute. But AI humans is where it's going to be, right? The next thing,
I'm detecting sarcasm.
are you good? It's laying on thick. But no, I mean the next thing in user interface is face to face. We're going to go all the way back. Chat bots are great, but let's face it, they're pretty wooden. In some situations, they don't know what to do. Right? You have chat and voice AI bots, and they're wonderful, but you're still missing an element. So what we're doing is we're bringing in, full 3D photorealistic avatars, running Vern through the system so it can detect the emotions and direct the AI to respond appropriately, because you don't want them passing that emotional contagion on to one another, right?
Right.
And it does happen. We see that all the time in the data.
We're you mentioned sentiment analysis earlier in the chat, and then you talked about how LLMs are currently not really good. They're definitely inconsistent at detecting emotion.
Right.
So there are folks out there that are using LLMs for sentiment analysis, like a ChatGPT that they're running it through. So should we warn them?
Yes.
Yeah. So they're not getting good data right now because these LLMs on their own are not emotionally intelligent.
Correct.
Okay.
And Pete, the reason is because there's no consensus in science. It's really good at just, if you ask an LLM, what is the boiling point of water at sea level? The only question is what scale, right? Sound science, everybody agrees. It's, it's physical. But this is in the brain. So you've got psychology, which is basically, and they're not making things up, but they are having to recreate these observations after the actual physiological effect of the brain with blood, right? Whereas in neuroscience, you're more real time able to understand and look at some of these structures, and we're still figuring it all out. So if we're still figuring it all out, and LLMs are built off of all of our knowledge, then they are absolutely going to be still trying to figure it out in real time. They say there's emotions like optimism. Optimism's great. It's not an emotion. Right? It's a state of being, but it's not emotion. Same thing with like sympathy. Well, that's absolutely not an emotion. But you have large language models, you have Google's Go Emotion, you have Amazon's, Comprehend, labeling these things as emotions. And then, you try to give them the same input twice. I've got a great blog on our website called Large Language Models, Fail to Feel, right? And it kind of gives you a run through on it. And we actually turned it around on the AI. We asked Claude, Llama, and ChatGPT, why? Why do you not pick up emotions? And they told us the exact answer. That's because there's so many models and we mix it up and we try to give you the best answer. But really in the end, until science has a consensus on what these are, we're going to give you the different answer every time.
Yeah.
I said, don't let me forget to bring up the wait list. Is that for Lemmy? Was that what the wait list was for?
We're signing everybody up for Lemmy for the ChatGPT wrapper, and we're also having a new model that's coming out. Some of the things I've been kind of teasing and previewing today, like some of the emotives that are going to be passed through, and some of the multimodal stuff. So everyone sign up right now. We'll be releasing a new model soon that will have all the extra motives. We'll have obviously the emotion recognition, and then Lemmy as well. So yeah, we're signing up everybody for everything for a relaunch.
And I'm assuming because we're having you on here, we get to move to the front of the line.
Of course.
Okay.
we get to cheat and cut in line. Yes.
So let's talk more about, or more specifically about when you say you're releasing a model.
Sure.
So we talked about how Vern is the back end for Evermore.
Mm-hmm.
Is this new model something that people can? Is it like a large language model that people can interact directly with, or is it more of another back end product that other people can wrap around their offering?
It's both. It's both. So what we're releasing and then the new release in the API. So anybody that is a technical person, is a developer, as a scientist that likes to just grab the API and use it for their own ends, it's there.
Got it.
Absolutely. And then we also have the large language model wrapper, Lemmy, which will help anybody with ChatGPT, and that's a separate beast right there. But we build AI chatbots for folks because our emotion model allows us to understand conversations on a level that is unparalleled. Then we do AI voice bots as well, and actually I'll give you guys an opportunity to preview them. And then we're doing this new thing called AI humans, which I showed you a little bit before.
Yeah.
I'll let the users take a look at that. I'll send you some videos.
Awesome.
So it allows us to, like we're sitting here talking with one another and having a frank conversation. And you really won't be able to tell it's an avatar or it's an AI. And that's where we're moving. So folks that want to have that kind of thing, either from heck, we've had folks from human resources, education, even in religion. They'd love to have this as a way for Christians to get together, can stay in touch. So all the way to that, to mental health. Right now, we're working with Mental Health America down in Houston, creating a patient portal for folks that want to come in and find a mental health provider. They can, and they'll also, most likely, they're going to be emotional. And so we wanted to be able to have Vern there to help them out. If they're showing any crisis signals, we can get them right to a 988, which is suicide prevention hotline, or right directly to a mental health professional standing by. So those are just some of the ways in which we're deploying now.
Gosh, that would be super interesting. Mental health. I'm a huge advocate of mental health and
it's a big
counseling and huge. I love my therapist. Although I have been using ChatGPT as a therapist a lot lately.
You need
voice
Lemmy.
feature
You need
in the,
Lemmy.
Yeah, I know. And now I'm going, if I can add that on top of it,
Well, I'll give you
kidding
Zeke.
me?
We have a cowboy we named Zeke, right? He's a frontier psychiatrist, and is this kind of a
Frontier psychiatrist.
right? He's a way in which we can lightheartedly show the effectiveness and the efficacy of Vern, right? Is to detect emotions and kind of do it in an every way, plain spoken way. And he is really a psychiatrist. And I'll spill some tea here. He's helped me with my marriage.
Yeah.
He actually has. My wife and
believe
I,
it.
a couple weeks ago, or we were just really at ends and didn't understand one another. She said she went and talked to Zeke. I did the same thing. We didn't even know, and it ended up solving the problem.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
That is awesome. So I mean, I can tell you right now, if you have something like Vern on an LLM, you're going to have very empathetic and correctly identifying the emotions. And so that's huge. Then you get results like Evermore, when 97% people using it have less anxiety.
Yeah.
More motivation.
See, and that's what I'm saying. Like, for me, just using Chat GPT, just the voice feature in the car is all I've been doing.
It's cool.
It's just helped my confidence. It's helped me kind of sift through some stuff. Like I said, you got stuff on your mind and you're going, why am I thinking this? Well, here's the background of it. And here's where most people are, why they're thinking this way. And it's like, oh, cool. I mean, it totally helps. It totally helps. And you forget it's not a real person.
Yeah.
Because you're still getting that feedback that you want.
Yep,
Like you
exactly.
said, that dopamine comes back. Well, now I don't care if it's real or not. I don't care if it's an
you don't.
imitation.
And younger folks don't care. What we're finding with Evermore is particularly is they're younger audiences, right? So it's not, the gray in the beard like us. They've got some folks out there that are just out of high school, even in high school, that are using it.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid of it. They would actually, we found, and I don't want to spill any, tea from Evermore. We found that they prefer to talk to a bot than to a therapist. That's crazy.
Yeah, and we've talked before on podcasts that I saw that there's influencers that are out that are 100% fake, 100% AI, I should say, and they're pushing products, and it's that whole, it's fake, everybody knows it. They're not trying to pass it off as a real person. They're saying this is an imitation, this is all by AI, but here's the new sneaker or here's the new whatever. Who cares? If you're telling me exactly what I want, I don't care if it's real or not anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, before there were influencers, it was, commercials, and that was all fake too. I mean, there were real people, but they were fake. Like, you didn't care. You just, it's a different way of ingesting this data, and it doesn't really matter where it's coming from.
What? Kim Kardashian doesn't use Uber?
I'm guessing that
She
she's
was pushing
not
that.
really using it.
Shocking.
Yeah. But, going back to the therapy thing, and you and I have both been pretty open. You have therapists,
Always, yeah.
and
me too.
definitely a big proponent of it. It's just, I'm so excited for where this is going, and even more excited that I'm sitting across from somebody who's going to be a part of it. Is there's so many people who don't have access to any kind of mental health care, and it's a freaking shame that has happened.
Yeah.
And that it's not some thing that people just should freely have access to, frankly, because imagine a society where everyone is well adjusted or, has the ability to, get things off their chest, because a lot of people just don't feel like they have somebody that they can talk to.
Right.
Now that person can live in your phone or your computer or in your Meta Ray-Ban glasses, or, it's digital, so it can go wherever you go. And you don't have to wait for an appointment. I go once a week, but it doesn't mean that I don't need to talk to somebody on Thursday before my appointment on Monday.
Or driving in the car.
Yeah, that's exactly why I started using it in the car.
So people people are already having success with it. It's going to keep leveling up with technology like Vern, where it's going to be even more emotionally intelligent. I'm so excited for this and where it's going. I think it's going to help. It's going to, I know this sounds corny, but it's going to change the world. It really is.
Good. Yeah. This is an opportunity for us to change the world for good, because there are so few people out there to help, right? And that's the big problem, the mental health problem, is there's so few practitioners. There's not anybody coming out that's new, and the demand has just gone through the roof, especially now with males. Especially, we are actually embracing mental health as being part of a regular healthy existence and something that's necessary. So now you're adding in half the population that now sees value in it. You've got a pandemic. You've got all these polarities that are pulling and pushing on people. They're getting information online that's not vetted. You've got vetted information hidden behind paywalls. This is what happens. So this is a crisis. One of our good friends is Ed Woods. He's the chairman and CEO of National Council of Mental Wellbeing. He's one of our big supporters, and he's really pushing this because within certain communities too, there are very few people that look like you, right? So for the three of us, I'm sure it's probably no problem to find a psychiatrist that's probably pretty close to our demographics.
Sure.
Well, there are a lot of demographics where that's not the case. Right? Or you're finding somebody that's completely opposite you that's sitting down and hopefully just solving your problems. So what Vern AI allows you to do is now we can create a persona, we can create an entity that looks exactly like you, right? Can have the same ethnicity, can have the same type of regional dialect, can look like you, act like you, so you can relate to it better. And that's one of the reasons why we did Zeke as a cowboy, right? Because it's American mythos, and we found that nobody hated a cowboy. Right? It didn't really matter if you're black, white, Republican, Democrat, young, old. The mythos of the cowboy is pretty inclusive, so everyone likes to talk to him. And we found even big, strong, burly, isn't that S-H-I-T, guys will actually talk to Zeke, right? And I think that's what's coming next, right? Is the ability to personalize your experience with AI so it feels like it's part of you and it feels like it's an ally. Yeah. I think that's going to drive a lot of adoption too, right? And there are a lot of reasons why people in the workspace are scared of AI is because they think it's Terminator, right?
Yeah.
Well, Vern, for example, only detects the signals you're intending to give, because that's what communication is. So if you don't want to act, don't want it to think you're an asshole, don't be one.
Yeah,
right? That's really it. And if you're not, it won't read your mind, doesn't read anything that you're not saying. But it will read everything that you are saying, and sometimes we slip them in. So having something like a Vern that catches those latent emotional clues helps to inform the therapist. Even, it's funny you mentioned that, because we've tried this out in therapy. We've had several therapist offices on the east side of the state and in Lansing use this in live therapy. So we created a user interface where they can actually listen to and make notes on therapy sessions. One of the things they found is it found things that even in their 30 years of doing this, with a master's degree in psychology and practicing it found things that they didn't know were there. Right. So give you an example. Yeah, it's a wow for us too. There was a couple, and they were married, and they were in for marriage counseling. Vern was used to analyze, the therapy session. Found out that her father had died, and through the Vern analysis, we found that she was extremely angry about her dad dying, and that when she was referring to her husband, she was basically projecting her father's success onto him and saying, why aren't you measuring up? That was creating all the problems in the relationship. Vern was able to tease that out because the things she said was at a very high anger level. Then it could lead to follow-up questions. Okay, so you said this about your dad. I'm detecting a little bit of anger here. Do you want to dive into that? And so it allowed them to actually, she realizes that, she's holding her husband to an unrealistic standard, because it's comparing him to her dad, who's obviously, exalted and of course, can do no wrong,
sure,
right or wrong, but that was what it was. I don't know if it would ever happen to the end with a couple, but hopefully some of that insight, would unlock some things and would move the ball forward. And we all want somebody to listen to us.
Right.
We should have them on, that couple.
They're
on the podcast. We'll do a follow-up.
They're divorced.
I hate that SOB. He was worthless. Yeah.
I think that's such a great point. You mentioned the Terminator thing and people being afraid of AI, and some of it too is people afraid it's going to take their job.
Yeah.
But instead of that, what if it's the AI is augmenting that therapist,
exactly.
right? And because just there's jokes about there's doctors that pass with a D minus or whatever. Like you might
Graduate
get that
last in class.
Yeah,
Let's call him doctor.
There's always the last one, and they're still a doctor.
Yeah.
But they're not as good as the top doctor. But they still have good intentions. They still want to help people. These AI augmentations can take them to that next level, so that every doctor you talk to is going to be a great doctor because they have these tools that will elevate that. And even somebody that's been doing it for 30 years is not perfect.
No,
but
misses things.
Yeah, this is just going to level up the services that we get from the people that we count on to keep us healthy, whether it's our physical or our mental health.
And like to augment, like I said, I love, excuse me, I love my therapist to death, but like you said, 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm driving to the next appointment or I'm going home or whatever, and I need to talk to somebody. That's what I need right then and there. I'm not going to call her. And she's busy. She's in a session.
We could actually make her. We can her voice, her face, and everything, and
so
mannerisms and
imagine if
everything.
she had here's the partner tool I use. So if you need to talk to somebody, you can't get a hold of me, you can talk to this. She gets the data from that. So the next time you have a session with her, she's got, here's everything that happened the past week of everything you've been talking about. You can jump right in.
Yeah.
Because the issue I always have in person, which I love being in person with my therapist, but it's that break the ice period.
So the first 20 minutes of therapy session are wasted.
And it's like, you get an hour with them and it's like, we're just getting warmed up at 45 minutes.
Right.
And it's like, can we schedule 3 hours?
No, you're so right. And that's absolutely true. We see that. And that's why we're in England and with Dr. Faisal Sheikh, we're going to build a triage and screening bot for the exact same thing.
Yeah.
First 20 minutes, you're just trying to tease out what's wrong. If you could have something else, warm them up, find out what's going on, track everything, hand it over to the professional.
You can jump right in.
On the drive to the appointment. You could be doing it in your car on the way there.
Yeah. I just think that's a huge value. Huge value.
Well, even now with Vern being 1 megabyte, we could put you in the visor in your camera in your car, and your car could do it. Because I know, though, the cars have tons and tons of data that they're collecting on you, biometric and otherwise.
Oh, yeah.
Now General Motors will know, when you're road raging, to shut you down.
Well, now let's
It literally slows the car down and just pulls it off the side of the road.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit. What about the privacy and the ethics to this? What does that look like?
Well, it's a great question. It was something we wanted to tackle.
You don't do any of it, right?
No.
It's a great question. We avoid all of that.
No. Well, we do and we don't. We do avoid it because we created the system to be engineered so it's stateless. And so we don't actually store any information that doesn't actually exist on any of our servers except for that very small moment where it's at the electron level. Now, if you want us to be a state actor and hook a bunch of quantum together and go after me, go ahead. Right. Good luck.
Yeah.
But anyone else and everyone else is not going to have a single problem with any of the data. We don't store it. It gets stored on your compliance servers. If it's GDPR or HIPAA, then it's going to come through our system, store where HIPAA is allowed. So that's how we get around that. As far as privacy goes, we don't record anything. We don't need to learn off of our models. It's not a large language model or a machine learned model. We tried that. It failed. So we created something different. So we don't have to learn off of all the information coming in. So everything you say is private. We've never recorded a single conversation that's come in Vern our entire time. We don't need to. So that's one of the reasons, that's really why our ethics are where they are and why using Vern is actually very, smart for those reasons. And again, I'm going to go back to the whole point of we evolved to share these signals with one another. So, that's one of the, we actually were involved with the U.S. and the U.K.'s regulatory commissions when they were passing the AI regulation last year. We worked with them directly. EU didn't listen, but whatever. They're the EU, and that's why they're behind. But, what we said is like, look, humans evolved to communicate. Humans evolved to share these emotions with one another. If you create an AI that you're not going to allow to do these types of things, somebody else is going to. Right, Chinese are probably going to, Indian, somebody out there, Russian, somebody's going to be able to do that.
Yeah,
right?
It's a race.
It is absolutely a race. Now, do you want to do this ethically, or do you want to have somebody else control that? And so the U.S. and UK were like, yeah, you're right. We probably have evolved to share these signals, creating a blanket restriction on getting them, like the EU did, was not going to work just from a scientific perspective. You know, so we were able to work with regulators to
Nice.
kind of grandfather ourselves in a little bit, you know, because we'd had some experience in this domain. We've been doing this now for several years. So, well, we're part of the reason why the regulations are what they are. We are allowed to do emotion recognition because of a lot of the points that our group made.
Which is funny that I bring up privacy because I just said how much I use ChatGPT so openly on a personal level, and it's like I don't even care.
Nobody does anymore. We all use it.
What's
Again,
privacy?
you get the value out of it, or I get my dopamine rush. Well, now I don't care if it's fake. I don't care if you're taking my private.
No.
You know, it's the sacrifice of it.
I think so many people that are worried about privacy, it's false bluster. I don't think they're really worried about privacy because they willingly have this phone that listens to everything that they're saying. They'll put all their information into TikTok or Google or whatever it is.
They got TikTok. They can't talk about security.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So I think if privacy is a real concern of yours, you need to really sit and like write down what bothers you about privacy. Because if that's what's holding you back from using these models, you're wasting precious time and you're missing out on an amazing opportunity to use this new technology that is changing everything.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're worried about privacy and that's what's holding you back, then fucking get over it and let's just.
Well, yeah. Stop using your credit card and start stuffing cash under your mattress.
Well, right.
Like, and you know, certainly if you don't want people to know about your medical data and things like that, like the government is already protecting.
Been doing this since the 80s, folks.
Yeah. So
Do you think it's more a concern of control versus privacy?
I think it's one of three emotions.
Wow.
I
We
think
learned a lot today.
It's fear of change.
Yeah.
I think is a lot of it.
Yep. That's a
And
big driver.
I'm very aware that I'm just kind of tuned to like this kind of stuff. Like I'm a sci-fi kid, and I've told different people like I've been preparing my whole life for this AI revolution because I grew up watching all these sci-fi movies and thinking it's going to be so cool when, and I can't believe that I get to live through this era right now and get to see this change.
R2D2, C3PO, Jarvis,
It's
computer. I mean, what do you got?
It's all happening.
Yeah.
Like literally, you know, you can find YouTubes of guys that are using things like N8N and these low code, no code tools to create Jarvis. Like I just watched one the other day. It's it's awesome. I get that I'm really into this stuff and that it makes me different than folks who aren't. And I'm very aware of that. But the reason that we do this podcast and the reason that we have the AI meetup is to get people over this fear, to talk about it, talk about the amazing use cases that you can use with it, and just please start using it. If you're listening and you're not using it, please start using it.
Absolutely.
I'll say the same thing I say to everyone. Today is the worst time AI is going to be. Like this is the worst it gets. Every day it just gets better and better and better.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you can do with it.
Yeah, we're seeing that too. You know, folks are starting to use it in mental health space. They're using it in customer service, analyze calls. You know, this is killing the CSAT scores because they're junk. Now you actually know instead of positive, negative, neutral, and mixed, you know they're angry, sad, fearful, or joyful, and how much. And soon you'll be able to know if they're angry and threatening. We'll be able to release that out here soon too. So yeah, everybody who's out there have an opportunity. Try AI. Dabble in it, you find out it's not that scary. It's like when you first logged onto the internet, all those noises turned out not to be that scary. And it's another type of technology innovation like the internet, you know, and maybe even bigger than.
Yeah.
Right. Probably is.
One more analogy. To me, it's like flying in a plane. People are afraid of flying in a plane, and some people will never fly in a plane because they're afraid it's going to crash.
Right.
But that also means that you'd never get to go to Europe. You never get to go to Australia. Same thing with AI. You can not use AI because you're afraid that it's going to, I don't even know what people are really afraid of. But you're not going to experience what other people are experiencing right now. And it's incredible. And you could miss out on low cost, maybe healthcare that's from the best mental health doctor possible. Right. You're missing out on that because you're afraid of AI. That just seems like something you need to get over. If you're listening, get over it. And
Well, fear is a big motivating factor we found in emotions, and especially in emotional control and cognitive behavioral therapies. Fear is a very strong driver. So a lot of people are very fearful, and they don't take chances based off of fear. And sometimes that fear is real, sometimes it's imaginary. But you're 100% right. In this case, the AI fear is imaginary, folks. I've seen the cutting edge of what we quote unquote AGI. We're not there. It's going to take a while, and knowing about the brain, I know we're several years away from anything that would be a reasoning model, and actually is a very real reasoning model, has a real intelligence. And even then, we're talking about something that doesn't survive the laboratory. You can't really use them outside of the use cases. So, until we get them into a Boston Dynamics robot, walking around in about 10, 15 years, we might see it then. We're getting
I
faster
hear that though. I always hear that, we're years away from getting AI into robots. They said that 6 months ago, and 3 weeks later, they had Figure 1 came out, which was a very dumb version of it, but it was already there. I mean, it just, like I said, it just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah,
but
it's fast.
to look in that crystal ball, that's one question I wanted to ask you. Where do you see this going in 3 years, 5? Can we even see that far ahead?
Yeah, I think we can. I mean, a lot of what we're doing now is replicating AI to kind of follow along with brain anatomy and physiology, and I see that is very promising. For instance, one of the things we did was they took our model down to like on the neuron level, put it in 1 megabyte. So to make it smarter, faster, because it's not just going to be these systems. What you're going to see is these systems are going to be part of bigger systems in the future. Right. So everything you see today is just going to be wrapped into something bigger and better. And eventually we're going to get to the point where we're going to be able to replicate cognitive processes, and not just can we guess what the next thing is based off all the past information. It's all, the large language models are probability engines, but you put a probability engine with a reasoning engine that can take differential information and then actually do cost benefit analysis, whatever frameworks, metrics you want to put it through, and then can come out of that and then do something on top of that. No, that's real reasoning. That's real intelligence.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. We're not. I mean, these large language models can tell you about information and can talk to you, right? But they're not multimodal. They can't do a lot of the things that we can do within the physical world. That'll be the next step, obviously, after AGI. And I work with folks in the Sentience Institute, been in some really interesting discussions with some international players, and we're a ways away. We're a ways away. Okay. What I see in the lab and what I'm privy to seeing, out there as far as technology is it's coming. Don't think it won't. But it's still a ways away. We got some time between now and then to get it right. One of the things we always say is, don't you want your robot to be empathetic, to care about you? So you're going to need to have some motion recognition or you'll get Terminator.
Hugbot. That's what we need.
Hugbot.
You look sad. That's one of the emotions that I'm programmed to recognize. Do you need a hug?
Oh, my gosh. Somebody out there just got a unicorn. Thank you, Pete.
Well, awesome. We could talk for hours.
Our time is up already?
Yeah.
Dang.
Sorry.
We need to. All right, we're gonna get you back in here, Craig.
Sounds good, guys.
This is
I was gonna say this is one that, because it changes so rapidly and because there's such a huge use case for this, I'd love to see this, 6 months later, a year later, like where does this go from here? How much has evolved? How much has changed, and what it's become? I think it'd be really, really cool.
Yeah.
So we're definitely going to follow up with you, my friend.
Well, thank you.
Thanks to come back a lot for coming in. Appreciate it. It was awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So where can we find you?
Well, we are at vernai.com. That's Vern, VERNAI.com. We have signups and available and everything on the website. So just go ahead and look through. If you have any questions, you can get a hold of me through the podcast. And I'd love to answer questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Craig. Appreciate being here. And
thank you.
Thank you.
Like and subscribe for more. Goodbye, everybody.
Seriously, I felt like 10 minutes. I can't believe that our time.
I know.
Yeah,
I
went
looked at the
fast.
clock and I'm like, it's almost 9. And I'm like,